Nurse.org and Major League Sports teams are honoring nurses with discounted game tickets and once-in-a-lifetime experiences. From throwing the first pitch to riding the Zamboni to on-court recognition, join the fun. Visit nurse.org/nurse night to find a nurse appreciation event near you and grab your discounted tickets today. You're listening to Nurse Converse, presented by Nurse.org, a collaborative podcast amplifying diverse nurse voices. Get ready for a dose of inspiration, a sprinkle of education, and a whole lot of community.
Hey there, my fellow nurses. Hey there, my fellow nurses. Welcome back to the Nurse Converse podcast by Nurse.org, and I am a co-contributor. I'm Advocate Maggie. Super honored to be invited to this space, talking about how to protect your license. If you follow me, if you follow the podcast, then you know we've been going over many different topics all under protecting your license. And today I'm going to be talking about protecting your license, how to handle false report to the Board of Nursing. Now that's pretty scary, and we're going to dive into that in the article. So you receive a letter from a Board of Nursing, and that's pretty intimidating. Your heart's pounding. I don't even know who this person is. This was 5 years ago. I think that I remember that they told me I was going to get reported to a Board of Nursing, but I'm not even sure. This is my ex-husband doing this, or this is my current husband and we're going through a divorce, or this is my current partner. I just know it. And we're, interesting enough, this was, many, many, many moons ago. And now all of a sudden, I'm getting a letter from a Board of Nursing, whatever it is, but you're saying this is absolutely false, and or you don't remember it and you haven't been written up for anything, and or told by your organization or a patient that you did something, you're like, I didn't deviate from the standard of care. Like, surely I would have been written up. Surely someone would have told me I'm still at a job. I mean, so how could this be true? So take a breath, because you got professional liability insurance, right, folks? Remember, go and check that out. And if you don't, whatever you need to know about Board of Nursing investigations, make sure you check that out as well, where I talk about, this experience. It's crucial that you understand that process. As a prior investigator, I've been a nurse for 25 years. During that 25 years, I did spend a short period of time at a Board of Nursing. And just remember, folks, the mission of the board, and I talk about this in the articles as well, is to protect the public and not us. That's not their mission. That's not their duty. They are missioned for other things, but it's not that. So you need to keep all those things in mind when you get this false complaint or allegation, and those are two different words from a Board of Nursing, because it can be pretty scary. But before we dive in, I just want you to make sure that if you don't already have professional liability insurance, that you check out the professional liability insurance, go to your own car, home insurance. Nurse.org on the website talks about this. I talk about this. NSO there's links on the website for that as well. So be sure that you check that out. And any of the nurse attorneys that are out there writing articles as well on nurse.org, be sure to check that out. But don't panic. You're not alone. Some of the things that you need to make sure that you have in place if you get a Board of Nursing complaint and allegation, because we don't understand it. The article gets pretty lengthy. So be sure that if you are under investigation, and anyone, this is a 10, 15-minute read. It's nothing crazy. But I just think that everyone who holds a professional license should ultimately understand and what could possibly happen, whatever type of law that you could possibly stand under, whether it's civil, criminal, administrative. And over the next 30 minutes, we're going to talk about administrative, the Board of Nursing, or the regulatory agency that's giving you essentially the privilege to practice. That's basically what it comes down to, AKA, I think we all refer to them as a Board of Nursing, but truly in every single state that could be different. It's set up very differently. So just make sure that you understand that and you know that especially if you're compact, you hold a compact license. So what does that mean? Compact means that you opted in for that in the state that you live, which I think to date, and please drop in the comments because we all love comments. There are 33 states that are compact. So you could go, for example, I live in Texas. There are, I could go to Nebraska to practice. I could go to another state to practice that has opted in for compact because they all recognize the standard that Texas does. So it affords me the ability to go to the other states. Now you can always opt out for that. And I know I'm going down a little bit of a rabbit hole, but again, it's really important that you understand these things, especially if you are under investigation, you've got a complaint, because if you hold another license, many licenses, that could come into play. So making sure that you understand that, and things like if you have a compact license, then it may be wise to reach out to that board that you hold these other licenses in that are compact, and you say, hey, what can I do to retire that license? Because I see that you recognize, insert the state that you live in. And so why would I need to pay basically dues, possibly risk and I'm going to swing back to why I'm going down this rabbit hole, the possibility of being under investigation in this state if my home state opens up an investigation against me. See what I mean? So lot to digest, lots to think about. So make sure that you're reading up on the articles on Nurse.org. You're listening to the Nurse Converse podcast, wherever that is. Could be Apple, Spotify, on the website, Nurse.org. Simply Nurse.org, type that in. But those are some things that it's just essential to think about. And as we move in to some of the stuff that I talked about and some steps that you can do, because I don't want it to be all gloom and doom. I know that I sometimes feel like I'm Chicken Little, and I really I hate that, and I don't want that for you. I want for us to educate, and I am so very thankful for Nurse.org allowing me the ability to do what I'm sometimes feeling like I'm doing all the time, is just educating nurses, but on a grander scale. Because what I don't want for a nurse or any provider for, that matter, is for you to stand in front of a board of nursing or a regulatory agency and not understand that process. Now, if you deviate from the standard of care, and what we're talking about today is false reports, so that's not you. So if you did not do the conduct, then you have to prove that. And so you need to have legal counsel. If you did deviate from the standard of care, be sure to go and follow the link to the article. If you're reading the article, Protecting Your License, How to Handle a False Report to the Board of Nursing, on the website, there's also a hyperlink to that. And I do believe that those will be in the show notes, so be sure to click on over to that. But today we're focusing on the nurse that's falsely reported to a regulatory agency and what that looks like. And I don't want it to be all doom and gloom. I want us to stay organized, talk about what you can do. And that's number one. Get organized. Start mounting your defense. The second that something does go wrong, and I want to even back it up just a little bit more, even before you get a complaint, or there possibly could be a complaint or an investigation, why wait for that? If something goes really astray, goes sideways in your environment, and there could be a big possibility, a good possibility that you could be reported to a regulatory board. One of these four-letter agencies could get involved. Pause. Start to think about things. Even when you're documenting, if you're involved in a code, if a patient falls, I talk about these in my charting courses. It's really important that when you go to document the actual events, that you're actually documenting what happened, the care that was provided, and making sure that you're giving yourself credit for the standard of care that you did adhere to. You're escalating, you're getting that patient to a higher level of care. Say that's what the false claim was about. Patient fell within, let's just say, a long-term care facility, had a bad outcome, and they're coming back, and you've followed textbook everything, and you documented it. You followed the standard of care, you followed evidence-based practice. It's critical that you document that stuff. You keep it all organized. Now, you're not keeping record of this of your own, but you're making sure that when you're documenting, ideally in real time, as close to real time as you possibly can. If the patient fell, you have to take care of the patient. You're going to come back and document all the things that you did do, who you escalated that to, who you talked to. Now, because just remember, an investigation could be up to 2 to 3 years. And so what's going to afford you the ability to remember that? What you did or did not document. So if you wait till the second year, it's going to be way more difficult. Be sure that in the moment you're taking the time to document these things, those are just prudent practice. If you're coming back to document, why are you coming back to document? You better make sure you're reaching out to risk management, late entry. Those are all things to think about. But that's not what we're talking about today. Today is the false report. That's a little bit of a rabbit hole, but things that you really need to think about. If the complaint is related to patient records, making sure your legal team is getting those records. So there may be things that your organization does that's very unique to your organization that, unless specifically asked for, the other side may not produce. Working hand in hand with your legal team, making sure you have the professional liability insurance, reading over every word of the allegation and or the complaint, understanding the difference between both of those. You're not accessing the medical record. Let's just say you still work for the organization. You're not accessing that medical record. You're working with the legal team, and that has to all be done through your legal team, through a process, oftentimes referred to as discovery. But that's your legal team's responsibility and not yours. But 100%, you need to be checking out the medical records, the EHR, anything that's going to give you a little bit of memory of what happened, what you did or did not do, because all of us would love to believe that we can remember each and every event, but that's just not possible. That's not possible. We take care of oftentimes thousands of patients in a year. To think that you're going to have an independent memory of an event that happened that may or may not have been grossly significant. If it's very significant, you may have memories of it, but every second that you're away from the event, you don't have accurate memories. So just remember that. But again, could be related around an event that happened and you did do textbook what you're supposed to do, and there it is. It's right then. It's right there. The nurse's note, the flow sheet, the care plan, what you did or did not do. You escalated that. You're following the policy for chain of command. You wrote that in the medical record as well. Independent, you wrote something in an incident report, and there's internal communication within the organization not referenced in the medical record. I talk about this again in my charting course. You do both of those, but you don't reference an incident report in the medical record. Correspondence and communication log, any communication, as I stated, could be an email, could be a text, could be in the EHR, you wrote a little note in the flow sheet. Those are all things that you want to make note of. You want to let your legal team know of as well. There could be video of you in the med room. You want to ask for that. There could be video of the hallway. You want to make sure that you're asking for that. If you don't communicate that with your legal team, then you're not going to know that. Another example could be if there's a disagreement with a colleague or a misunderstanding with the patient, make sure you let your legal team know that. Make sure you make a note of that. Maybe you don't have a legal team yet. Maybe it's a complaint and not an allegation yet. And you're not writing the patient's full name, maybe some abbreviations, and taking some notes, because the further away that you get away from the event, you may not remember it. And you have to make sure that, maybe you're reaching out to your legal team and asking, there was an event that happened and I want to make sure that I keep a record of it. What are some things that I can and cannot do as it pertains to that? Because you're never writing down any information. You're never accessing the medical record after the event. Keeping the medical record up to date, as accurate as possible in real time of the events that did happen, should honestly be enough. If you quote the patient, if you quote family members, if you quote things just subjectively, I talk about this in a unbiased, organized fashion. Oftentimes we know that to be soapy. Subjective, objective, assessment, plan, intervention, evaluation, reevaluation. That should be enough to help, more often than not, give you an idea of the care that you did provide just looking at your notes. But if there is anything that happens, don't hesitate to reach out to your legal team to discuss that. If you're especially if you're in anticipation that there could be one of these four-letter bodies involved, criminal, civil conduct, be sure that you reach out to your legal team and talk to them about that.
Hey nurses, looking for exclusive discounts? Nurse.org has you covered with deals on everything. Save big on the essentials you need to excel in your career. Don't miss out. Visit nurse.org/discounts for the latest discounts made just for you.
Witness statements. If other colleagues are involved, start writing down some names. Again, working with your legal team, talking about that stuff to make sure that if there was witnesses, you have some names, you have some general contact information all done through your legal team. But if you don't tell your legal team, Sally was there, charge nurse, Bob, the chief medical officer, housekeeper Sally, whomever was there, in an organized fashion. Oftentimes what I help legal teams do and nurses do is create a timeline of those types of things, and then pulling in some additional things, not only the witness statements, but policies, procedures, video, anything that could help support that this is a false allegation, that you did not deviate from the standard of care. And here is why. Getting support from your legal team, that's essential. Maybe within the organization. I talk about this in some of the other articles as well as podcasts. So be sure to get onto the Nurse Converse podcast, wherever you're listening to the Nurse Converse podcast. That could be Spotify, Apple, YouTube. Make sure that you get on there, you like, follow, and share. But I talk about some of this stuff there as well. Very, very, very important. Always want to have legal representation and liability insurance. Those are big things not to skip over, especially if you feel like it's, you're being falsely accused. Just want to make sure that you get the evidence, everything that you need to defend your professional license. And that stuff really does matter. So in the series that this is under, Protecting Your License, How to Handle False Report to the Board of Nursing, other articles there talk about whistleblower rights. So that's another piece in the article I discuss. So be sure to get on over there. This article, and then I write another article and do a podcast. So be sure on the Nurse Converse, so talk about this, that you check those out. But you do have rights. Now, in this article, I just kind of touch on it, but the other article, I go into a lot more detail. If this is you, you're not alone. Please don't suffer alone. There is plenty of education out there. Again, make sure you get on over to Nurse.org, check out that article, listen to that podcast on the Nurse Converse podcast. Get a hold of your professional liability insurance. Check out the policies under your own organization as well as your board or regulatory agency. You're not alone. You can get legal representation. You need to make sure that you respond to the investigation, the investigator, the four-letter agency promptly. This is nothing to be messing around with. Lean on your support systems. This can be very, very, very stressful and something that you should absolutely not be handling alone. A border nursing complaint, and little trigger warning here, can, I've heard, lead to a nurse, attempting suicide. You're not alone, especially if it's a false complaint, and you are not alone. And why it's so very important as well. You have professional liability insurance. You know your rights, especially if you're a whistleblower. Your state regulatory agency has stuff about whistleblower protections. Your state has stuff about whistleblower protections. There's federal whistleblower protections. I touch on this in the article, so be sure to check that out as well. And as we move into the last 10 minutes. It's just, I want you to know that unfortunately there are false reports that are made, or sometimes there are leaders sometimes that don't know what they are supposed to and not supposed to report. Patient has a bad outcome, or there's an incident, And some states, they spell out that if it's 5 minor instances, it can be handled within the organization. There might be a new nurse leader, could be an inexperienced leader. We're seeing some of that as well with the average experience of the nurse. As one of my peers says, Rebecca Love, 2.8 years. That's can be concerning. And now you have a nurse move into leadership and they're just trying to do the right thing. There's no malice. Something happens within the organization. They write up the nurse. It may be repetitive conduct. And they think that they have to report the nurse to the board of nursing because they're a nurse leader. Maybe HR comes to them and just says, hey, I'm not even sure, the nurse keeps, doing this conduct. What are we supposed to do? And I think we're supposed to report to the board of nursing. It says right here. And oftentimes they may not be 100% sure, but feel like that they're doing the right thing to protect the organization, to protect patients. And then they know that the mission of the board of nursing is to protect the public, and they have obligatory requirements to report. And now you're like, wait, this is not at all even what happened. I did do everything, even though the patient did have a bad outcome. And let's go back to a fall. And I did everything. There was no bed alarms. That wasn't on me. That was on you. I did everything that I possibly could. I let the doctor know. I escalated this. I had just taken a report, whatever the mitigating circumstances were, and whatever you feel is a false complaint. And you're just spelling that stuff out. But those are things to, keep in mind as you're walking, through the process, as you're, trying to figure out, navigating the process. This is a false claim. My leadership did this knee jerk and I didn't really do anything wrong. I understand now that they thought that they had to report me, but now I'm standing here in front of a board of nursing and I'm still standing here at my job. Like, they didn't even terminate me. But my nurse leader thought that they had to report me because someone had a bad outcome. Those are things that do happen, and having professional liability insurance is just really important so that your lawyer can spell that out to the board of nursing. And maybe it's just in the complaint phase and it hasn't moved into the full on allegation, and your legal team is able to write your response, a rebuttal to what's been sent to you, and explains, no, this is not at all what happened. This is a false report, and there was not intention, there was no malice here, and that they thought that they were doing what they were supposed to do, but this was handled within the organization. This is what's happened, and this is what the organization has done. Background summary of the nurse, whatever is happening. But that's one scenario. Another scenario could be a patient filed a complaint against you. Say you're a bedside nurse, or say you're a nurse who owns a practice, and the patient files a complaint against you. Does the board of nursing have to file a complaint? And it's because you wouldn't write them for Botox, or you wouldn't write them for some drug that they thought that they needed or wanted, and you were like, there's a contraindication because you have XYZ. And although I understand that you would like to take that drug, as all of us would, whatever it is, but that's contraindicated for your condition. So the patient reports the nurse practitioner, let's just say, to the board of nursing, and it's a false complaint because they wanted drug X, but the nurse practitioner, like I talked about here not that long ago, wrote in the progress note, patient requested, again, in a non-judgmental, subjective manner, patient requested drug XYZ for this purpose, and whatever it is that the discussion was, and the plan was developed out that was safer. So you offered up XYZ or this or that, all reflected in the chart, discussed with the patient, and the board of nursing or the regulatory agency is like, okay, well, I can see, the rationale behind that. If an expert looks at that, they can say, I can see that is contraindicated. Had that nurse done this, then we would be talking about something else, because if they had a bad outcome because that drug was written for, that was contraindicated for that comorbidity they had, then, right, it could be the family filing a complaint. There could be 3 different types of law involved. You see what I mean? It's so very important that the documentation is done to protect whomever it is, whatever modality, again, whether it's the nursing assistant, I'm going to go all the way down, all the way to the doctor prepared nurse, the nursing leader. That could be even for the nursing leader that it's through a process improvement plan, whatever it is. It may not be in a medical record because it's not the modality of that nurse leader. The modality of the nurse leader is to lead the nurses. So what did the nurse leader do when Nurse Sally came onto their radar about this? Created a process improvement plan reflected in the employee's file, XYZ. So some things are going to be very nuanced to modality. So I hope you take the time to check out the article, Protecting Your License, How to Handle a False Report to the Board of Nursing or any regulatory agency. It does depend on the state that you're in, whom that falls under. So I hope you get the opportunity to check that out. Please like, follow, share, comment. Love to hear comments. What do you want to talk about? What have you seen? Have you seen a false report before? How was it handled? Was it dropped? Did it cost you 2 to 3 years of your life? Did you have professional liability insurance? Did you not have professional liability insurance? Drop those comments in. We want to hear those. Nurse.org has a lot of great information out there, so be sure to check that out. Lots of articles, information. Drop your comments there. Ask questions. And it's been an honor to be a co-contributor for Nurse Converse, the Nurse.org website, writing articles, providing you with what I feel like is essential information and education as you walk along as a nurse. And even if you are falsely reported, you're not alone. It's not hopeless. It is a process. The investigation process can take some time, but the more that you understand. And over the series, I talk about this Protecting Your License series that Nurse.org has allowed me to do. This is one of the articles in one of the podcasts I've done. So be sure to get on over, check all that out. But you're not alone. It is not hopeless. There are plenty of nurses. I was with one a couple weeks ago who had their license revoked, practicing now 20 years. This is 20 years ago in an emergency room. It's not hopeless, folks. You're never alone. It doesn't matter what it is that you've done. Get the education, get a lawyer, break down the process, know your rights, whether it's whistleblowers, it was a false accusation, it was a false report, several articles that I've written, and then many articles that others have written out there on nurse.org. Check those out. The Conversing Nurse podcast. It was an honor to be with you the last 30 minutes, giving me your time. Appreciate it. Stay safe out there. Like, follow, and share. Protecting your license, your livelihood's a big deal. And see you later, nurses.
Thanks for joining Nurse Converse, brought to you by Nurse.org. Help us grow by leaving a 5-star rating and review on your favorite podcast platform. Nurse.org supports nurses with career and education tips, life advice, and breaking news. Thank you for all you do and for being you.